Hey everybody, welcome to episode 35 of the Go Get Outside podcast. This is your host, Jason Milligan. Forewarning, today I got hit by some sort of stomach virus or food poisoning, so my apologies if I don't have much of a personality this episode. Those of you who are returning listeners may remember episode 10 with Scott Merrill, where he talked about getting into canyoneering. Well, today we will have his younger brother, Andrew Merrill, on the show. So this is our first sibling to appear on the podcast. Andrew is a flight paramedic, a father of 3, and a mountain bike enthusiast. He and I recorded this back in March in Stevenson Ranch in California on a day that was anticipated to be extremely rainy, but turned out to be very sunny instead. And at the time, I was apparently getting over a cold. So this episode, you get to hear me with a stomach virus and with a cold. So congratulations to all of you listening. There will be some medical jargon thrown around in this episode, and perhaps some of you listening may not be familiar with some of it, so right now I will explain one that comes up rather frequently, which is a code save. And a code save is basically a successful resuscitation of a cardiac arrest victim made outside of a hospital. So when they get to a scene where someone has had cardiac arrest and they resuscitate that person, that is a code save. And with that, let's get to the show.
My name is Andrew Merrill. I'm a flight paramedic in Arizona. I'm a father of 3 kids. My oldest is my boy Jordan, and then my middle child is my daughter Brittany, and then I just have a 2-month-old daughter named Eleanor.
Oh, so you got a new one.
Yeah. Grew up in Southern California until I was about the age of 27 when I moved out to Arizona. People always ask me why I left Southern California, because the beach, the weather, everything else that you can do there. Disneyland, they always come up with those things. And I say the simple life.
Is that really what do people really say Disneyland is the reason why you should stay?
It's one of them for sure. As a kid growing up, Disneyland was like 3 times a year, easy. I moved to Arizona. It's like, just go to Disneyland. You got to drive out there. You can't wake up in the morning and drive to Disneyland and spend the whole day there and then drive home and got to get hotels, and we might as well be there for 2 or 3 days, so now you're spending all this money. So
it's just funny because of all the reasons I could think of to live in Southern California. I'm sure Disneyland is a good time, but it wouldn't be like number one priority.
That's not number one priority for me either, but it's funny how Disneyland is such a pinnacle in people's lives, or a staple in people's lives. It's when Eleanor was born, we bought a lot of stuff that was Disney, and my girlfriend, she was all about making sure that Eleanor had experiences with Disney because she appreciated it growing up as well. So we've already started off on that, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
My girlfriend's one of those too. She's one of those season pass purchasers who goes 2 or 3 times a month sometimes.
And then the weather came in last night when I was here, and I was, we were barbecuing and it was sprinkling. You don't get that in Arizona. I miss that kind of stuff too. And being able to go to the beach was nice. I didn't go to the beach much, but at least not to swim. I did go to the Santa Monica Pier when I was younger and do a lot of that stuff too. But
you grew up in Lancaster, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so you're a bit of a ways from the beach anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was still kind of a drive, especially, the 405 back then was nothing like it is now, but you're dealing with traffic and whatnot just to get there. And
when was it that you moved out to Arizona?
January 2005 is when I moved to Arizona.
Okay, so it's been a little while.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of times I'll go to Lancaster to visit my brother, and so much has changed just in the time that I haven't been there. It's crazy to think, oh, you guys have one of those now, type thing, because we go up to Phoenix a lot to do stuff, and Phoenix has way more than Tucson does, of course, because of just population and whatnot. But hey, cool, you think it's crazy to see how much things change when you're not there.
Yeah, I grew up in Louisiana, and I moved out here in 2002, so it's been almost 14 years now. And when I go back to where I grew up, it's so drastically different that I don't know where anything is anymore. I've completely detached from it now because it's so different than what I grew up in. It doesn't feel like a place I recognize.
I agree. We moved to Lancaster in 1980. And, we grew up there. And in 1980, I only had 30,000 people there. To think about how much it just expanded, you think about when I was a kid. I don't remember that, type thing. So,
what kind of stuff are you doing in Lancaster as a kid growing up? Besides taking trips to Disneyland.
Well, legally? No. Lancaster was a good town back then to get yourself in a lot of trouble because there wasn't a whole lot to do. I had a pretty good childhood growing up. I stayed away from trouble as much as I could. I had my little bouts with it, but nothing too extravagant. But I had good friends growing up. Most of my good friends moved, out of high school or even before high school. Played baseball. I was really big into baseball, Little League, into pony. Even played in high school. When I didn't make the varsity team for high school, I played golf. I made the varsity team for golf. When I graduated, I just hung out with friends. Didn't really do much. Went to school for EMT and fire academy and paramedic. That was pretty much it. I didn't do much.
So at some point you got into mountain biking. So was that
did.
Later in life?
What's funny is I think back when I was probably in junior high, everybody had those BMX bikes and, chromoly and I have a Diamondback, or a GT, and I had a blue and yellow Huffy mountain bike in junior high. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever until it got stolen. But near my house, there was a place called Joshua Jumps. And that's where everybody would meet up and hang out, and some people would jump the jumps and stuff. And I couldn't do much on my bike because it was a mountain bike, and I would just ruin it. But, I think back that's kind of funny that I didn't get a BMX bike. I got a mountain bike, when I wanted the bike that I wanted. Or when it was time for my dad to buy me a bike for Christmas, So
everybody else is doing tricks and standing on back pegs and spinning their steering column around.
And I'm I can't do that. You know what I mean? I can switch my gears. Check this out. That type thing. When I first started flying, 2008, the base that I was flying out is in Kearney, Arizona. It's a small town, maybe 2,000 people there, and it's a mining town. It's right outside of where the Ray mine is. Ray mine is one of the biggest copper mines in the country. All of the crew there, we were all about the same age. We were all into the same things, guns and being outdoors and things like that. And a couple of the pilots, they went mountain biking like every day. They had some pretty flashy mountain bikes, and I was like, man, I want to get me a mountain bike. And so it took a couple of years for me to finally go buy one. And once I bought one, it was over. I rode every day. There's a trail near my old house in Tucson. It's called the 50-year trail, but there's a section called the chutes. It's pretty much all downhill, and the sides of the trail are as high as your shoulders, so it's like you're going down like a water slide. And so I would do that 3-4 times a day. And then I bought a GoPro and mounted it to my helmet or my handlebars, and just so I could get GoPro
How much
footage.
trouble did it get you into?
Well, and then I got to the point where I was I would ride halfway down the chutes, and I would put the camera there so I could get shots of me riding by, and I thought it was cool for a little bit. Uploaded a couple of videos to YouTube. I crashed a couple times, so I put that on there too. But
did you ever crash because of the GoPro?
Yes, actually. Let's talk
about
that.
That's what I expect.
Yes, so I'm riding with a buddy of mine, and we're not riding on the 50-year trail. It's a Tortolita trail, and it's usually a trail that horses ride on, but we go on there sometimes. And I'm behind him. We're in a kind of a normal section, not really much going on. And so I was like, I can ride with one hand, because I needed to adjust the GoPro because it had fallen forward a little bit. So, of course, I go to adjust with my right hand as I'm right-handed. Well, the left lever on the left side is the front brake. So he decides to brake for whatever reason. So I grab a handful of front brake, and I went right up and over the handlebars. Got it all on video. He comes back, and I'm not moving at all. He comes back, and
he's like, oh, your ribs are broken, but we got some sick footage, bro.
No, he goes, hey, don't move, because your butt is probably 2 inches from a jumping cholla, or, the cholla cactus. And so I did not move because I did not want that poking me in my butt, because that would have hurt a lot. And I even looked into the camera and said, I got it on GoPro. I said it just like that. And so I haven't videotape much more after that on my GoPro.
You learned your lesson.
I've done some stuff here and there, but I think part of the problem is that you look at this great footage that these professional people put on YouTube channels and whatever of their GoPro footage, and my footage looked nothing like it. And so it really discouraged me very quickly. And another thing too is that I was more in the moment. I didn't really, I forgot to start my GoPro. Who cares? I was more in the moment of being where I was at when I was riding, and I didn't want to mess with the GoPro anymore.
So GoPro's not going to contact you asking you to?
No, they're sure not. They're not. I don't have 50,000 views on my GoPro YouTube videos for sure.
Your priorities, you just got to get your priorities straight.
That's right. That same buddy introduced me to another guy, and we rode all the time. And about a year after I got my bike, there's a race that comes to Tucson every year, 24 hours at Old Pueblo, and it's a 24-hour race.
Is it a trail race or it's a
It
road
is.
race?
It's about 16, almost 17-mile loop just north of Tucson, out in the middle of nowhere. Some of it is on gas line road, but most of it is all single track. So we put a team together, just me and him. There's two of us, and there's 4-man teams and 5-man teams, and then corporate teams which go up to 10 people. And then they have single guys out there too. I don't know how they could do it. Most of them doing like 18, 19 laps in a 24-hour period, and that means you're just going, and it's all by yourself. I'm just sitting in the saddle all that time. But man, it got cold too. It got real cold. I was just miserable, but it was fun. I would definitely do it again. We tried to do it this year, but we're trying to get a corporate team together, and it sold out in less than 72 hours. So
yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these races of all types have gotten super popular, like all these mud runs.
Yeah.
One of the first one I ever was aware of was the one they do at Camp Pendleton down near San Diego.
Oh, right.
And years ago, I got a bunch of people to do that race, and then we did it the next year. And then after that, it had gotten so popular that if you didn't apply for it first thing, New Year Day, like New Year's morning,
right,
you were not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so I just have never done it ever since then. Now there are like all these other mud run races, and then it sounds like it's even the same with cycling races and a lot of other races, which I think is good news that people want to do these things.
Oh yeah, I think it's awesome. And when that 24-hour race happens, there's probably like 3,000 people out in the middle of the desert. They call it Tent City, and it really is. People go out there 2 weeks before the race, and they get their camping spot, because they want the primo camping spot right there near the finish line, because it's a good part of the trail. It's very fast. I loved it because everybody had cowbells, and so here I am thinking I'm going a million miles an hour, because there's tents on both sides, people ringing cowbells, and I was just trying not to crash in front of all those people, and we'll definitely be doing it next year. I think I'm just going to buy the spots, and people can pay me for it, because we definitely missed out for sure. I've only done one other 24-hour race, and that was in St. George, Utah, and they called it 25 hours of Frog Hollow because it happens on daylight savings time. When
so you get an extra hour.
Yeah,
right?
So you have to do an extra hour, yeah. That wasn't cold. It was actually awesome, because some parts you're up on a bluff or a plateau and you can see Zion from where we were at. I hadn't been to Zion since I was a kid, and so that was pretty cool to see that. They got people that are new to the sport, and so like on the downhill sections, they use their brakes a lot, and they a lot of brake, and so their tires lock up. And then, you hear the chattering of the bike. So it's very hard to go fast in those sections. But there's some guys that are just, pros at it, and they are able to do it. So this one guy was running up behind me, and I'm like, I'm trying to get over for you, because it's single track. And so he just pushed me off, and I hit this rock. And so, I was still kind of slowing down, but I hit a rock, and my junk just all came forward and hit.
That's always the big danger, right?
Hit the riser post, and so I had to ride standing up. And I was only 8 miles in. I think it's a 12-mile loop. I can't remember. So I had to ride the rest of the way standing up because I was hurting so bad.
Someone needs to design a bike that has special padding just to,
right?
Because that was a big thing when I was a kid too. Like you were talking about BMX bikes and things, and we'd always be jumping ramps, and without fail, at some point, you will land and just smash your crotch right into the pole
every time.
It's always going to happen at some point.
Yeah, I did that. I was flying a desk at that point for my company. I was in education, and it was fun to get out and do that. I hadn't, I'd been doing a lot of traveling and stuff, and the year after that, I didn't do hardly any mountain biking. My bike just sat there, and it was sad. I decided, what, I'm a paramedic. First, it was fun doing the education thing, and I learned a lot, and it was awesome to see, because I worked with new hires and stuff, so it was awesome to watch people come in from like a ground medic level or an ER nurse level and learn the stuff that we teach them about critical care and watch them progress and watch them blossom into, great clinicians that they are. But I renewed my paramedic license and I was like, man, I almost felt like, why am I doing this? I don't fly. I flew shifts every now and then, maybe once a month, just because I wanted to be out with my clinicians. But I was like, I'm a paramedic first. So, I stepped down, let somebody else do it, and then that's when I got back into mountain biking. And, I was like, I really missed it for sure. Found, some new trails that have come up, in Tucson that I didn't know about. So I was doing a lot of that stuff. And then this year was the year of the bike races for me. Epic Rides, who puts on that 24-hour race in Tucson. They have one coming up, Prescott. It's called the Whiskey. It's very popular. Then Grand Junction, Colorado. And then this year is the first one for Carson City. And I'm pretty excited for that one. My cousin's going to do it with me as well. So we're going to go up there, and I guess the trail takes you on top of some bluff that overlooks Lake Tahoe, and just looking forward to doing that for sure. I've been doing a lot of training. Towards the end of last year, I was a little bit overweight, probably from drinking the beer and eating whatever I wanted to. I lost about 25 pounds, and I had to give myself a goal. My goal was to do a half marathon. There's a half marathon in Tucson. It's fairly popular, mostly all downhill. Gave myself a goal, lost about 25 pounds, and did a marathon, and I did it in 2 hours. I wanted to beat the 2-hour mark, but about mile 10 and a half, my knees were like, okay, we're done. So it felt like I was doing hip thrusts just to get my legs in front of me, doing this half marathon. But I did it. I was very proud of myself at that. It took like a month for my feet to stop hurting, my knees to stop hurting. Definitely not 20 years old anymore, And so I was like, okay, I'll make this year the year of the bike, And so I've been doing a lot of riding. A lot of upgrading on my bike, make it a little bit lighter, so it's a little bit easier on me to. Each race it's not 24 hours. It's just 30 miles or 35 miles, and you just have to do it, as fast as you can. So
is it the races that you really like, or just the cycling in general?
I like them both. I like cycling with my buddies. We'll meet up and we'll banter. Most of my firefighting buddies are some guys that fly with me, and we'll just chat, whatever, and we'll ride for a little bit and stop, let everybody catch up. And, we love going downhill. The climb is fun just because that's where you get most of your workout.
But, of course, everybody prefers the downhill.
Oh, yeah. But the downhill is the payoff, is the reward for the uphill. And so we'll all gather at the top and just see who can get down the fastest. And the races are fun too because it's a goal. It's something to look forward to. It's something to be proud of. It's not bragging rights, but it's something that say that I did it.
Maybe almost like a measure of what you've been doing throughout the year leading up to that, or something, or just something to give you a focus. Maybe so it's like instead of just going out and having fun, maybe I can focus this fun in a certain direction. So do you think it's anything like that?
I kind of come back to the marathon I ran. Yeah, it's a half marathon, but my dad said, well, how far is it? I said, it's 13.1 miles. He's like, well, it's that 0.1 miles that get you, And it literally almost was, I was coming towards the end, and I wanted to give up so bad, but I didn't, and that's just kind of the measure of, hey, I lost 25 pounds. I'm feeling great, and I ran this half marathon, and now I'm kind of doing the same thing, I'm going to do all these races, and I'm going to try to get good times, and it's just kind of showing that, at 37, your life doesn't have to be over. You can still go out and do these things. I look at my brother. He's in his 40s, and he's out doing the things that he's doing. I think I'm going to be just like him. I'm always looking for that next hobby. Something catches my eye or something, and I think that's where my brother and I are alike. Something catches, let's go do that. And we try to do it, or not try to do it, but we do it and have fun at it, and we do it for a little bit, and then we move on to the next thing sometimes. But sometimes things keep our interest, like me, mountain biking.
Right. Speaking of your brother, who was on a previous episode of this, Scott, talking about canyoneering, I have to imagine at some point he's tried to get you into that. So what has that been like?
He has, and when I was going through the fire academy when I was younger, of course they taught us about rappelling, and I haven't been through the class in a while, but swift water rescuing, trench rescue, you're doing all that stuff. You're working with ropes and stuff, and he has tried to get me out, and we just really haven't got to a point where, hey, let's just go do this. Where I'm either in town for a week or something longer where we can plan it out and do it, or he's come to Tucson a couple times, and we've hiked up to Mount Lemmon, which is the mountain there next to Tucson, and there's actually some trails there that have the anchors already posted in there and stuff. I think if we just planned it out right and all the ducks were in a row, I think I would go do it with him. I don't know about getting a wetsuit and doing all that crazy stuff.
Those are the most fun ones.
But I definitely enjoyed rappelling in the fire academy. You get on that rope and you get in that seating position, but you still have your hand on the ledge. That was the biggest thing for me to do, is just to let go. And it's funny, I fly in a helicopter, but I am scared of heights. I'll be honest about it. My mom is scared of heights, and pass it on down to me. Thanks, Mom. And it's just, I have to make sure I'm in control. I have to make sure that, which with rappelling, you're in control to a point, but if something fails, and like I said, I fly in a helicopter, and people are like, "What? You're scared? You're scared of heights?" Yeah, I am.
Well, it'll just be interesting to see when he finally gets you out on one of these, if it's a gene in your family to be attracted to that thing or not.
It might be. I look at some of the things that he's done and some of the pictures that he's taken, and it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And only if you go canyoneering or rappelling is you're going to see that. That's the only time you're going to see that. And I look at it that way with being a flight medic in a helicopter. We fly over.
You're seeing views that you only ever can see from the sky.
And it's usually, we fly at a lower altitude than jetliners and things, of course. So, we're 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet above some of the coolest stuff. And Arizona, people think, it's desert, but there's actually some beautiful mountainous rock country, Sedona and up towards those areas, just flying over. It's just, I can't believe that I'm getting paid to fly over places like this, and then let alone do what I love to do and taking care of people. So
yeah, in defense of the desert, for people who don't live around desert areas or haven't experienced desert areas, the thought is always like the Sahara Desert, right? Like, the desert is just a bunch of sand dunes and there's no water and everything's dead.
Right.
When you visit the desert, you find out that is not the case whatsoever.
Right.
That there's all kinds of crazy wildlife that's different from elsewhere, and then rock structures that are different from elsewhere. Like the desert can be extremely interesting.
It is very, and Lancaster is the high desert, but it's very brown. A lot of tumbleweeds out there and things like that. But Tucson is very green. It's very green desert, and all the different types of cactuses are awesome. You got mesquite trees out there that some people look at them and it's just a tree, but and the Palo Verdes too, when they bloom as well. When the saguaros bloom, I can't remember how long it is, but it's only a certain time of the year and it's not for very long. The saguaros bloom, they get flowers on the top. That's awesome. I didn't see that in Lancaster. They have Joshua trees and stuff out there too, but it's very beautiful desert, and the mountains are. People are like, yeah, mountains in Arizona. It's like, yeah, and there's still snow on the mountain in Tucson right now.
I always find the best sunsets are in the desert too.
Yeah.
Something about the air quality or something.
Well, monsoon season is the best time for sunsets, I think, in Arizona, because you'll get a monsoon that'll blow through and it'll be west of you. Just the purples and I'm kind of colorblind, so it looks purple to me. I've done a good job at trying to train myself with what colors are, but just the purples and the pinks and the reds and the oranges, it's just crazy. I've never seen sunsets like them until I moved out there. It's good living out there, and there's less people.
Like, are you truly red-green colorblind?
It's it's kind of weird. It was passed down from my grandfather Norm, and he was colorblind. I'll look at like a red, and certain reds look orange, certain oranges look red. It's just kind of weird, like, is that orange? Is that, like a dark green could be, is that brown? I just have to take a look at it. Maybe I need glasses. I don't know, but but it's definitely awkward. I always have to ask my girlfriend, does this match? There's stuff that obviously matches, but I do find myself doing that.
You do also fly, right?
I do. I just sit in the back. We call ourselves self-loading baggage.
Okay.
Yeah, and so on board we have a pilot and then a paramedic and a nurse. The pilots, they're very highly experienced. Most of them are old military pilots, which are sometimes fun because they do the job and they do the job well. Being colorblind has nothing, it doesn't affect anything with flying and stuff.
Right,
yeah.
right, okay. That was my curiosity, is if that was a hurdle that you would have had to deal with, but it sounds like maybe for your specific field it doesn't affect.
Yeah,
it doesn't affect you driving, right? Does it?
No.
With red, green lights.
Well, I know that the green light's on bottom and the red one's on top, right? And then if I go to Florida, where the street lights are sideways, then
And you just don't drive.
Right. Have somebody else drive. Right? Is the green light on the right or is it on the left? I don't know. When I was applying for some fire departments when I was younger,
they're like, can you tell the difference between fire and grass?
Right. Well, it said color. Color blindness was on there. I was like, why? I didn't get it. I guess in hazmat situations, the color of smoke is different.
Oh, really?
The color of the flame is different. I guess maybe it had to do with that. But I'm definitely not a hazmat technician by any means. As long as I can see whatever's going on behind my thumb, I'm far enough away, and I'm okay with that.
So let's get into the paramedic, the rescue work and responder work that you do. What led you into that? Like, at what point did you decide, oh, let me get this EMT training?
When I was growing up, it'll sound funny, too, because I was born in 1978. But when I was growing up, they had the show Emergency was on reruns, and I would watch that every day when I got home from school. And I wouldn't do my homework, and I would watch that show.
Little did you know that you kind of were doing your homework.
Right. That's a great line. I think I'll use that with my parents, right? Johnny and Roy. And almost every paramedic will say that. And it's almost cliche, It really, really was like, that might be something cool that I'd like to do someday. When I was 15 years old, I was mowing lawns for money. So my dad, we lived in where Scott lives now. That's where we lived when I was 15. Down the street was LA County Fire Station 134. And my dad's like, well, why don't you go down there? They got grass. You can cut their grasses. All right. So I went down there. They were outside washing the fire engine or whatever. And I said, hey, you guys pay me to mow your lawn? He goes, no, we usually do it ourselves. And proud firefighters that they were. He goes, oh, but there's this Explorer program. I was like, oh. Okay.
You're like, do they need me to mow their lawn? I don't understand what you're telling me.
I was like, yeah, do they have a bigger lawn? Do they have a riding mower? That's what I want to know. Yeah. So I signed up. He goes, oh yeah, just email this person. And so back when email was new, and go online, you can check it out. So I did and signed up for it. Showed up for the first day and became an Explorer with LA County Fire Department. The program is all about shaping these kids not to be firefighters. What I got from it initially was discipline, leadership, direction. That's what I got from it, and I think it was very good for me, very good. And I appreciate these Explorer programs and what they do for kids for sure. You can only do 12-hour ride-alongs with the firefighters when you're not a certified Explorer. So I was doing my 12-hour ride-alongs, and every Sunday we would meet up at the big, the North Training Center out there in Lancaster, and we'd do our drills, do our calisthenics and push-ups and run, and then we would train about firefighting stuff, hose lays and things like that nature. I was accepted to go to their certified academy, which was down in East LA. They got where their dispatch center is. They got their training grounds up there. It was 6 weekends in a row, Saturday morning till Sunday night. So you stayed the night there. And so the first weekend, oh man, we were doing push-ups forever. We were running forever. And I loved every minute of it. Because you do cadences as you run. And that was fun. The third weekend I showed up, and it was the Wildland weekend. We were going to Camp 8, which is in Malibu. And it's right near where they had the big fire in Malibu. Lost some of the firefighters out there. I wanted to quit. I carpooled with a buddy, and I was like, I'm going to go home, dude. And he's like, man, why are you going to do that? Just stay, do your best, whatever. And I don't know why I wanted to. I think back and I don't know why I wanted to. But I'm glad I stayed because that was the best weekend, was the Camp 8 weekend. They have an obstacle course out there. We were doing wildland firefighting stuff. And I'm so glad that I did not that day because the rest of the weeks got harder. The weekends got harder, but they got more fun. Week 4, we went somewhere to do some type of training at a different training center, and we had to take an apparatus off the engine and put it on another one, the one that could actually drive, because the ones at the training center could not drive past where they were, old American LaFrances. So we got there, did our training, came back, and we neglected to put that apparatus or that piece of equipment back on the training apparatus. So 1 o'clock in the morning when they all call us out to do training, they would call us out to do basically, hey, you got a fire and you got to do this hose lay, and so you go and do the revolution, and then you go back to sleep. There's an engine company is what we call them, a group of 4 guys standing there at parade rest. They didn't do the evolution because that piece of equipment wasn't on there. So the instructor's like, you guys got to be kidding me. You guys owe me 1,000 push-ups. 1,000 push-ups, right?
Is this over time or is this all at once?
No, it was all at once. Here it is.
Collectively or individually?
We all had to be we're all in a line, right? We're all in formation. We're all still wearing our bunker gear. And, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and it's raining outside. It was early November in downtown LA or East LA. We started doing 1,000 push-ups. What's nice about wearing bunker gear, he can't tell if your knees are hitting the ground or not, And
I think he probably really didn't care that much. He's like, if you only do 500, it's still punishment enough.
And so we sat there and we'd get to like 995, Oh, so-and-so didn't want to do the last 5, so we're going to go back to 990. He did that like 3 or 4 times. 1,000 push-ups. It was horrible. Horrible. But you know what? I graduated, became a certified explorer, and then now I could start doing 24-hour ride-alongs. And I would do them mostly at that station. It was right down the street.
And what would you do on a ride-along?
Well, you're kind of like what we call the probie or the boot. You're making sure that you're doing all of the dishes. You help with cooking, cleaning up making sure the station's clean. If a call goes out, you make sure you're first one on the engine. They don't want to have to wait for you. Most of them are medical calls, of course, and so get the blood pressure or make sure whatever, anything that they need, during that call. And then on fire calls, depending on how much they trusted you, how much you've ridden with them and trained with them, they let you do certain things. I never went interior as an explorer.
Yeah, I'm assuming they wouldn't be allowed to let you do that, right?
Yeah, no.
Just too much liability.
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
You're a child at that time
by
law.
I was, 19 years old when I had my first big fire, an apartment fire. And so I was an adult at that point. We laid up and I had to make the hydrant. And I was all excited about doing that. I made the hydrant super quick and got water to the engine, and they put out the fire super quick. But I remember the call like it was yesterday because I was out actually sanding the fire hydrant in front of the fire station because we were going to paint it. And it's still painted the way we painted it today. I'm sure it's been touched up. But you hear we call it an MDT in the engine, and that's kind of a little computer that they can get the information from instead of having to talk on the radio. And that usually starts beeping before the tones go off. So I could hear it beeping. And then I heard a car honk its horn as it drove by, so I turned around to look at the car that just honked its horn, and here's this big plume of smoke up in the air east of where we were at, the station, and I was like, guess that's where we're going. So ran in, and got my stuff on, and I got in. I was the first one in the engine, and we went and put out the fire, and that was pretty cool. I had the bug way before then, but I really got the bug. So, I tested with LA County Fire, and they say if you don't get what they call Band 1, or back then that's what they did, they call it Band 1. They say if you don't get in Band 1, you'll die on the list. I'm still on the list. So, and I don't even think I can get hired now with my age, So, I don't know. I don't think I'd ever leave flight medicine if LA County called, even though I really, really wanted to work for LA County Fire. And I think that had a lot to do with Johnny and Roy, and because they were in the show, they were with LA County Fire, it had a lot to do with that. But the leadership and the discipline and the direction that I got from being an explorer, and being in the academy, my dad said, it was funny because every time he'd ask me a question or whatever, sir, yes, sir, no, sir, that definitely was happening. And he saw the change. I got into EMT school, became an EMT, was working for a small mom and pop ambulance company out of Duarte. And we were doing mostly inter-facility, no 911. It was just all inter-facility. And it was basic, BLS. So just me and my partner, 2 EMTs. So we didn't do any advanced skills. And it was my partner was a guy, his name's Grant, that I went through the EMT academy with, or school with. It was kind of cool that we were partners. Did that for a little bit. We decided to go to the fire academy. It was a private fire academy through Glendale Community College here in Glendale, California. It was a year long because it was just Saturday and Sunday. That's a long time. And it was right back into that mode, right back into that academy mode. Boots are shined, uniforms are pressed, and I got my uniforms dry cleaned every week. And I got my boots shined by this guy at kind of like a police equipment store or whatever in Glendale. I'd drop him off every week, and he would shine my boots for me because I wanted to make sure my boots were shined. He would shine all the police officers' boots, all the motorcycle officer boots and stuff, and so that's how we found him. And all of us would take them. It'd be funny. The next morning after, Monday morning after academy, he'd have a row of 20 pairs of boots, in front of him because we would all drop our boots off because he did a phenomenal job. There were some military guys in our academy that could shine boots like nobody's business, and so they would, of course, take their boots there. But it was good. My brother had gotten married during my first academy. Actually, now that I think about it, it was during my first academy, and I didn't go to his wedding because I was in my academy. And there was a lot of stuff that I missed in this academy as well because it was every weekend. I was single, so I'd have my kids every other weekend. So my parents would watch the kids. Of course, I'd come home and be with them at night and stuff. So I missed some stuff there too, but there was a bigger picture there. I wanted to make sure I had a career where I could provide for them. So I got perfect attendance in that fire academy, which was awesome to have. We started with 45 people and we graduated, I think, 32. There was only 3 people out of the 32 that had perfect attendance, if I remember right. A lot of the people in our academy, because it was right after 9/11, a lot of people in our academy were people that were doing selfless jobs, actors. We had a couple of actors in there in our academy. You know, they stand up, oh, why are you here? You know, and their story was, well, I just felt like I had to do something other than this, which, hey, you know, awesome. Unfortunately, none of them finished. You know, they were gone within the first 6 weeks. I mean, some people are able to get it, you know, I guess I'll go be a firefighter. There's a lot of people I know that they didn't think they would be a firefighter when they graduated high school. A posting came up when they were 19 and they put in for it and they got the job and here they are. But I think for the most part, you have to have a special kind of mindset, you know, to want to be a firefighter or a paramedic or something of that nature. Probably just because of the stuff that you see.
I mean, it's a cliche, but they always say firefighters are running in to what everyone else is running away from.
And that's true.
Paramedics, to a certain degree, it's the same.
It definitely is. You know, it definitely is. You know, and there, you know, and there's. I probably had a shirt at one day that said that, you know, because I, you know, when I was younger, you know, I wanted everybody to know that, you know. But it is definitely true. We are there on their, you know, on people's worst day. Car accident, or you know, their house is on fire, or, you know, or their grandpa is keeled over, you know, their worst day, and we're there.
And that's when they most need people to help them. You don't need people to help you usually on your best day.
That's very true. That's very true. And that's kind of the thing too, is we meet a lot of people on their worst day, not their best day. And so we kind of have to
take that in consideration with the way they're going to treat you and the things they're going to say.
And, you know, you just have to be very compassionate. And sometimes it's hard to be compassionate. You know, you have this drunk driver that just plowed through 3 cars or, you know, whatever, which is not very common. But, you know, he's the only one hurt, thank God, or whatever, or he or she. And you still have to treat them. It takes a certain type of person to have to still treat somebody that just did something like that. And I've had to do that a couple times in my career, unfortunately. About a month before the fire academy ended is when my paramedic school started, and that was Monday through Friday. So Monday through Friday I was doing paramedic school, and then on the weekends I was doing the fire academy. So paramedic school took about 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, roughly. I was working in Inglewood on a 911 truck when I went through paramedic school. That was some of the most fun I've ever had. And I hate saying most fun because, you know, I saw a lot of crazy stuff in Inglewood, but, you know, from a paramedic standpoint, you know, EMT and then paramedic, that was the most fun I had. And I probably got the greatest experience there, for sure. I was there for maybe a year, and then... So let's clarify for people so they don't think you're a psychopath.
Okay. What was fun about it?
You know, we would get to work, we would expect 10 to 15 to 20 calls a day in a 24-hour period. And that says, you know, helping people. That's what I signed up for. I signed up for that, you know, and at that age, that's when, you know, you don't mind running around through the city with your hair on fire. You know, we're there to help people, and I was definitely doing it. You know, we were doing it a lot of times a day, and it's exactly
you were
what
useful.
You
were.
I was helping people.
What you wanted to do, you were needed for it constantly.
When I was an EMT there, you know, before I became a paramedic, you know, there wasn't much I could do. I could hand the paramedic stuff and this, that, and the other. I was important. You know, EMTs are important because they have a knowledge too, and they can help with stuff. When we're doing the advanced silly stuff, they can help doing the important stuff of getting that basic care started. We get a code save or anything like that. That was a great feeling. It's a great feeling to show up on a scene where somebody does not have a pulse, but by the time you get them to the hospital, they have a pulse. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling because who knows who that person is? It could be a dad, a mom, a grandfather, you know, a sister, a brother, whatever. You know, a lot of times we don't know if they make it or they leave the hospital. Sometimes they'll come and visit us or whatever. I haven't had much of that. You know, sometimes I'm probably okay with it. You know, the one person I followed up on ended up dying, which I didn't think they were going to. And it was kind of upsetting that week. And this is in Arizona because I ran on this guy. He had no history, and he had a stroke. We took him to the hospital. You know, and I went up and met his family because, you know, it was just kind of like, I don't know why the call stuck out in my head. You know, we wanted to go visit him and make sure, see how he was doing. And the next day, the next shift, we had an older gentleman at a bar who went into code arrest at a bar. So we get there and we're working him inside the bar and shocked him 4, 5, 6 times. I don't know. We get a pulse back, take him to the hospital, and he's one of the ones that walk out. And it's great. We got a code save. Come to find out, he'd actually coded probably 2 or 3 times before, and from drinking, he had poor health from drinking, and here he was on his 3rd or 4th chance at life, and he's in a bar drinking, and we saved that guy, which is great. I'm not trying to, take away from, him enjoying the, as much of life as he could, but that one guy that no history, stroked out, not abusing any chances that he had, and he didn't make it. And that's hard. That's hard to come across. And I'm sure that, doctors have that same, they see that too, doctors, nurses. It's not just paramedics that see that. It's all of us.
Do you have to kind of separate yourself emotionally from it? Like, do you purposely sometimes not follow up just because you want to maintain that distance? I imagine if you let yourself get too emotionally involved, it would become difficult to do your job well.
Yeah, and there's sometimes you get emotional about it too, and you just have to. You just have to put it away for a minute, There's been some calls where I do my job and then I get outside the room and I sit on the ground and it's just like you got to take a deep breath and you just sit there like, what just happened? And it's funny because there's these memes or whatever they call that go around, and one of them is a mom talking to a little child that says, "Sorry, honey, Daddy's a paramedic. We're not going to the hospital unless you're dead," or so, you know what I mean? Because we're like, walk it off. We always say that, because we become jaded a little bit. That's just, you don't need to go to the hospital for that, And it's kind of funny too, because it's 100% true. Like, so when my girlfriend was pregnant, she's a nurse and she flies for my company as well. She was dehydrated to all get up. I knew it, And she's like, "No, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go." I'm like, "You just got to go, You got to go to the hospital, get some fluids on board, let them start an IV and do that because, it's important." And so she definitely waited till the last minute. And she went, and she's like, "I definitely needed that." I mean, she was just throwing up and nothing was coming up. And it was, she was pretty dehydrated. So, but that case in point right there, we always wait till the last minute. And I think it's just because, we're okay. And, there's a lot of paramedics and firefighters and nurses and people that have died because they're like, it's just indigestion. But nope, it was chest pain and you were having a heart attack and you didn't wake up the next morning. It's definitely happened before. That's why I ride my mountain bike so much, or get out and do something, because the job can be stressful, definitely, for sure. And, getting out on the mountain bike or, getting out and going to the shooting range with all my buddies and, just popping off some rounds helps out. And you see that too. A lot of paramedics, they have to have something that they go do, whether it be mountain biking or hiking or shooting range or, classic cars or, even just stuff with the family, just to get away from it. We definitely have to do stuff like that.
Something to separate yourself literally from life and death.
Very much so.
Because your daily job is dealing specifically with that. Things with very big repercussions.
It really puts everything into perspective. It really does, man. We're not here forever. And when you're younger, you think that, if I live to be 90, that's so far from now.
Right.
But, man, it really brings everything into perspective, being in this field. And even when I'm not on a call, I have to be on top of my game. So here I am researching, different treatment modalities. So I'm even reading about, people having their worst day. And then when we do training, same thing. I'm one of the HPS technologists, and we do a lot of simulation, for training. We used to do clinicals where you had to go to the hospital for 12 hours or 6 hours, what it may be, and sit there and do stuff. But we found that we weren't getting, we do patient assessments, but most of the time we'd just hear from the nurse what's going on, or, when we're in an ICU and everything's already done, so you're not doing much, but just kind of looking through, the nurse's notes. Oh, what's going on with this patient? Okay. What did you guys do? Okay, great. So it's almost like just kind of reading a case study. So we found that simulation, we get much more out of it because they actually have to perform tasks. We have a high fidelity simulators that breathe, and you can intubate them and breathe for them, and they have a pulse, and you can start IVs, you can do chest tubes and needle thoracostomies and surgical trachs, you can do so much on it, and they bleed. The simulators bleed, and they cry, and they talk, and we found that with these high fidelity simulators, we get much more out of it, especially if the operators and the educators are on top of their game as well. As much as you hold the clinician accountable, you have to hold the instructor accountable as well. You don't want them giving a haphazard class on this scenario. So, we found that that's much more important because doing the tasks and things like that. But right there, okay, you have this simulator. Yeah, granted, it's a plastic man, but yet, the scenario is, he was just in a airplane crash, and you need to do this and do that for him. There you are, doing the same type of thing. So we're very involved in that, and you really have to separate yourself. You really have to make sure that you take care of number one, which is yourself. That's why I was like, I got to lose some weight. I'm a little overweight. Stop drinking as much beer as I'm drinking, Give me a goal. Okay, I'm going to run a marathon. Okay, what are we going to do for the next year? I'm going to go do these mountain bike races. Gives me a goal. Gives me something to look forward to so that when I'm at work and I'm reading these things, hey, guess what I got coming up in the end of April? I'm going to go ride the whiskey and hang out with a couple friends and get on my mountain bike and get some miles in and see some beautiful country.
Well, I think taking care of yourself is going to make you better at taking care of other people as well. You don't want to become a concern when you're in a scenario where you're supposed to be the one helping everyone.
And that's very true because we have to be in good shape to respond to these calls.
And that means physically and emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah. The physical part of it is because we could land, and it's happened before. Or even when I was on the fire department, hey, there's a lost hiker up here, or they're up there, but they're injured, and now you have to hike up there. So if I was overweight and just had 3 donuts and, and a rock star, I'm probably not going to make it up that hill if that's my usual diet.
That sounds like a terrible breakfast.
But, unfortunately, in my field, I don't do that. That's not my breakfast by any means. But, sometimes that's what their breakfast is right. They cry, bing, the bells go off and you got to grab a quick bite. You want to have something in your belly before you get there. I just try to do my best part of making sure it's a little bag of trail mix or, something that's got a little bit of substance and not, bad for me. But before, no, it's like, I'll have a donut or, I'll stop by, get a Cinnabon or, you know what I mean? There's clinicians out there like that. And, but I see a big swing, especially lately, of people wanting to become healthy. When I was first in education, in the morning we would bring, donuts or whatever for the clinicians to eat before class and stuff. And then there was kind of a change where they didn't want donuts. They wanted like bagels. They wanted fruit. They wanted things of that nature. And it was like, okay, let's do it, And so there is starting to be a big swing. We have a wellness program, because we want to make sure that the clinicians are well and they perform well. Because, and I don't know if it is, but I think that they want the clinicians to be healthy because they don't want them to not be working because, they were unhealthy. And that makes sense, I do appreciate the big swing. I have a lot of friends that are like getting into mountain biking or, trying to lose weight and, doing, this or that to lose weight and getting into that stuff. And I think it's good. Emotionally, if you feel great, if you look great, you're going to be doing great, right? And that's what the emotional part of it and kind of ties into the physical part. After I lost the weight, I was like, man, I feel great. I look great. People are like, man, that flight suit's like hanging off you like a coat hanger. You know what I mean? Like, and it was easy to zip up, and now we could take, heavier patients because I weigh less. You know what I mean?
Right, that's true because you have to, in the helicopter, that you really have to be aware of weight that's in the copter at all times, right?
Well, especially our helicopter. We fly in a small one. It's called an A-Star. It's a single-engine helicopter, and it's very popular with HEMS or helicopter EMS. But there is a weight limit. It's just because of how powerful it is.
So let's talk about, since you primarily function out of a helicopter, correct?
Primarily function out of a helicopter. We do have a couple fixed wing bases, but I am, my base, we have a helicopter there.
So let's talk about the difference between when you would be called into action versus, say, an ambulance.
People think of a helicopter, and this is how we explain it to people. They're like, oh, you're a flight medic or you're a flight nurse. How we explain it is, most people's perception of a medical helicopter is they shut down the highway, the helicopter lands, takes the car accident victim or whatever, puts them in the helicopter, and they take off and they go to the trauma center. Yeah, and that's probably the coolest part of that job, but it rarely happens. That's the glorified Yes, flight medicine, that's glorified. Where we're most used is interfacilities. We, most of our stuff that we do is we pick up patients from facilities that can't handle them anymore, and we take them to a higher level of care. And our main goal is to make those patients better between A and B. That's why we do the training that we do, and the critical care aspect of things. So, an ambulance will show up on a car accident, or, if it's out in the middle of nowhere, like a stranded hiker that fell and hurt themselves, they'll assess the situation. Well, how far is it for us to get to where this patient needs to go? Oh, man, it's going to take an hour. And, if it's a lost hiker, it's on a rocky road.
Right. It may be very circuitous roads through mountains.
Right.
And it may take 50 miles to get somewhere that's 5 miles away, 10 miles away.
And we see a lot of that in my area, because on the other side of Mount Lemmon, there's a lot of horse trails and things of that nature. And people, there's, back roads that people, drive off of and stuff. And, yeah, for them, it's easily an hour to the trauma center in Tucson. For us, it's a 6-minute flight. And so that's when we would be used mostly. And sometimes we don't get much calls in the city. They get on scene, and if somebody's really messed up, they just load and go. They just put them in the back of an ambulance and do what they can on the way to the trauma center. With helicopters, there's still a response time. They get there and they think, oh, let's fly this patient out. Well, we still have to get there. We do have contracts with some departments where, when they call us, we actually just start flying before they even think if they're going to use us or not. And we take that on. We'll take that cost on, because we want to help the patient. Because we want to get there when you get there, and if the patient needs, advanced care, hey, we're already here. And so we can pick them up and take the 6-minute trip, 7-minute trip to the trauma center, and they can get where they need to be in a timely fashion. It really has a lot to do with what's going on the ground. As far as car accidents and stuff, that's when we get used. But a lot of it's distance. It's not how bad they're hurt. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's like distance. This patient needs to get to a trauma center, and it's 2 hours for us or whatever, so then they'll just fly them out. That was definitely how it was at my first base, because it was really out in the middle of nowhere. And they only had one paramedic, sometimes 2 paramedics that worked for them. Just even the basic chest pains that an ambulance would transport in the city, we would get, because they didn't have that advanced care that the patient needed. So they would just show up at the base and back into the gate, and we'd do our stuff and start the treatment, put them in a helicopter, and fly them to the cardiac center or whatever they needed.
Is there, and maybe I'll be putting you on the spot when I ask this, is there any particular incident that stands out in your mind that you recall, either for good or bad reasons, specifically in a situation where you came in on a copter to give assistance to somebody who needed medical attention?
Well, I'll start it with this, and this is always my answer of when people ask a different type of question, but almost along the same lines, is what's the worst thing you've seen, or what's the craziest thing you've seen? And of course, I could sit there and probably tell stories all day long. The craziest thing I've ever seen, or the coolest thing I've ever seen, is the birth of a child. That is just, I have 3 kids, and my son was born, natural. My oldest daughter was a C-section, and then my youngest daughter was natural. And that is just, that puts it all in perspective. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here, is so people can experience things like that, because that, without a doubt, is the coolest thing ever, is just the birth of a child.
Has that happened on a copter
no,
on the way to the hospital?
We don't put patients that are in active labor in the helicopter, because we can't play. The pilot would have to play catch because of the way that they go into the helicopter,
right.
So we're really particular about who we put in that helicopter, especially when they're 37, 38, 39 weeks pregnant. Usually we stay and play. We stay at the hospital, and we're in it for the long run here, and we'll deliver the baby, and then we'll call the NICU. If the baby even has to be transported, we'll call the NICU team, and they'll come in and get the baby and take the baby where it needs to go, and then transport mom if need be. If everything's non-eventful, it's like, all right, well, you guys don't need us anymore. See you later. And that's happened for sure. One of the ones that really sticks out in my mind, there was a family. Well, it was a son and his wife that were visiting from back east somewhere, and his parents were in Arizona, lived in Arizona, and they went to the Renaissance Festival. And on the way back, a car crossed the line, and Dad was, DOA on scene, and the mom wasn't looking good either, because him and his wife were in the back seat. I transported him And that's all he kept asking about was his mom and dad. And that's hard. You don't want to sit there and be the person to tell him that.
Right.
And so you come up with ways to skirt around it. Hey, I wasn't the one taking care of them, but we got good people taking care of them, and they're doing their best, and they're doing what they need to do.
Do you ever feel like you just have to outright lie and say, "Oh, they're doing great"?
Yeah, I've definitely, I don't lie. I'll put it to you that way. I definitely just think of ways to skirt around it, because I don't want to be like, hey, yeah.
You don't want them to think you lied to them
exactly.
later. Right.
And it kind of comes back to their worst day. Now I just made it even worse because this guy said that my dad was alive, but...
And can I trust this guy from here on out?
Right. So I just, I skirt around ways to not have to do that, for sure. So it's tough. Things like that are tough. But there's a lot of calls like that I've had, unfortunately. I always look for the good ones. I always hope for the good ones.
Like the ones where the babies are born?
Yeah, babies are born, or some guy's having a heart attack and we give him medications to make him feel better and ease the heart attack and get him to the the cath lab and so he can get the treatment that he needs. We always like to try to make our patients better during the transport. And that was the biggest thing when I was in education, was to tell our clinicians that we're just not a Segway. We're not a taxi. Our job is to either continue the treatment that the hospital was doing that's making them better, or come up with our own treatment, per our guidelines, to make these patients better, because you just picked them up from an urgent care where it's a nurse practitioner and that person only can do so much. We have to continue that, or even start something else to better that. So as I get older, those are the calls I always hope for. I was younger, a big car accident, because your adrenaline gets pumping, and as a firefighter, you're cutting cars open, or you're intubating patients and things like that.
You're feeling like a hero.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess my vision of a hero has definitely changed. I'll still go to those car accidents, and my adrenaline still gets rushing for those calls, for sure. The type of hero I want to be is, the one that the patient walks out of the hospital.
So we're at the point where we should probably wrap this up. Is there anything that you would want to leave listeners to, like any misconception you'd want to dispel, or just something you'd like the public to know about paramedics and other people who provide emergency services like this that maybe they just don't know, and maybe you think they should?
I think as a whole, the public has a good sense of pride in firefighters, paramedics. I think it's very unfortunate of what's going on with law enforcement right now. Either way, however you believe, is going on, but I think there's a lot of good officers out there, and some of them are my friends. Granted, there's a bad apple, and there's bad apples with firefighters and paramedics. I mean, we saw it in Las Vegas with the overtime and all that stuff, and cushioning their pension. That's unfortunate, because just that one or two or three people, they're giving the whole department a bad name, but probably a lot of great firefighters and paramedics that work for that department. When we show up, we always have their best interest in mind, and sometimes people don't think that way. We're there to help people and get them the best care possible.
I think that's probably a good spot to wrap it up.
All right.
One thing I usually ask at the very end is if there's any kind of web presence that you have that you want to share, or in this case, if there are any organizations you'd want to send people to, or if there are kids out there who are interested in an Explorer program, any kind of advice you have there, places people go online or whatever to find out more information.
I don't have a web presence very much. I do have a Twitter account and an Instagram account where I post some of my shenanigans on there, for sure. A lot of it has to do with helicopter EMS, or just critical care as a whole.
So what are those links, if you want to share those?
My Twitter handle and my Instagram handle are both the same. It's Drew Seeley 08, so DREWSEELY 08. You can find me there and check out my shenanigans, for sure. I think Explorer programs are very important. Sheriff departments have them, fire departments have them. They're all over, and I highly encourage, for parents that are listening, and you have children that don't have direction, or maybe lack of discipline. I didn't have that growing up, maybe a little bit here and there, but, it was still good for me, though. Look into Explorer programs in your area, for sure, with the fire departments, with the sheriff departments. Your son or daughter doesn't have to be an officer, a police officer, or a firefighter if they go through this program. I think it's just a good way for structure, for discipline and leadership, and I think that, you will see it'll pay off in droves. with their schoolwork and their decision making for life and as an adult. So I do highly recommend that for sure.
So thanks for meeting me out here and doing this.
Hey, no, this is great. Thank you.
Man, dude, totally different weather than we expected, right?
We thought it was going to be raining, and here it is, beautiful blue sky. And no, man, this is great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for getting in touch with me, man.
All right.
And hopefully Scott will get you in a canyon and we can hear if you like it or not.
All right, sounds good.
A lot has occurred in the 5 months since Andrew and I sat down and recorded this conversation, so please welcome show favorite Erica to read, in Andrew's words, some updates. What's happened since March through now.
Since we have talked, I became the newest TEMS, Tactical Emergency Medical Support Medic for the Prima Regional SWAT Team. I'm very grateful to have been chosen for this position, and I'm still getting used to practicing medicine in a very different way than I'm used to. I have also been selected as the latest participant of the IAFCCP Haiti Scholarship, which allows me to go to Haiti and fly on our helicopter there for 10 days starting August 16th. Our helicopter operations there are based out of Port-au-Prince and support the communities of Haiti. This is a direct result of the devastating earthquake there, as they found there was no medical helicopter support during the aftermath. On April 30th, I participated in the Whiskey Off-Road Race in Prescott, Arizona, and on June 19th, I participated in the Carson City Off-Road Race. I finished both of them, but it made me realize that I need to get on the bike more.
I'll be curious to see how long it takes for Andrew to hear this episode, seeing as his Haiti adventure is beginning the day of the release of this episode, so hopefully you get a chance to listen to this in a reasonable amount of time, Andrew. In the meantime, everyone, run over to the website, gogetoutside.com/podcast, episode 35, Andrew Merrill, and there you're going to find a whole bunch of things, a lot of photos as usual, and then a crap ton of links to Andrew's Instagram, his Twitter, the 24 Hours in Old Pueblo race, the 25 Hours in Frog Hollow race, the Tucson Half-marathon, the Whiskey Off-Road race, the Carson City Off-Road race. Lots of races. If you are in those areas and looking for some races to take place in, whether they be running or cycling, check those out because maybe you'll have a good time. And then other links, including the LA Fire Department Explorers Program, which we spent a lot of time talking about. I don't have links to other areas, but if you're curious, if you want to get your children, or if you are a kid and you want to get into this program, you live somewhere that isn't Los Angeles, look around, do a search, check your phone book, whatever, and see if you can find a similar program in your area. And then also links to IAFCCP.org, Haiti Air Ambulance.org, and, perhaps most important of all, a link to Andrew's inspiration that he mentioned frequently, the old show Emergency. So do you have something to say about the show? Do you want to get in touch with us here? You can do that through email, go@butcherbirdstudios.com, or you can leave us a message, 818-925-0106. And while you're at it, please run by the place where you consume your podcast, whether that be Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever else on the internet. And do me a great big favor, make sure you're subscribed to the show, rate the show, review the show. It's a great way to make sure we continue on into Season 3. Next time on the show, Isel Gezik. She comes highly recommended from previous show guest Scott Swaney. She is a mountaineer who was raised in the Kurdish highlands of Iraq. Come back September 1st and hear some cool stories from a badass female mountaineer. I'm going to go drink some Pepto-Bismol.